Welcome to AI Podcast. Today we'll discuss the most important current affairs from the Hindu, June 27, 2026 edition, with detailed analysis for UPSC aspirants.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. We are taking this massive stack of sources and, running them through a custom-tailored deep dive just for you.
Right, because we don't want this to just be some dry audio textbook.
Exactly. Whether you're actively prepping for the civil services exam or you're just intensely curious about the architecture of global events, our mission here is to extract those ultimate aha moments.
I love that.
Yeah, we want to show you how these invisible forces dictating global geopolitics eventually trickle all the way down to, well, the food on your plate and the actual safety of the buildings you live in.
It's so true. We often look at the news as this series of isolated events, right? Like a ship gets attacked here or a court makes a ruling there.
Right in a vacuum.
Exactly. But the diagnostic landscape of the world right now is entirely interconnected. You really cannot understand domestic security without, understanding international supply chains first.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the maritime choke points that are currently dictating global stability. Right now, the Persian Gulf is facing this massive logistical paralysis.
Yes, a mess.
The International Maritime Organization, the IMO, has essentially paused the evacuation of 500 stranded ships in the region. And this is a direct fallout from the attack on the commercial ship Ever Lovely near Oman.
500 massive vessels.
Okay, drop an anchor, completely stuck.
And what's fascinating here is the sheer diplomatic whiplash coming out of Washington in response.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, just days ago, U.S. President Donald Trump was deploying this incredibly aggressive rhetoric, openly demanding regime change in Tehran. And then, fast forward to this morning, he abruptly announces that a deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete.
Wait, really? Just overnight?
Yep. He authorized the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz through this new MU, basically urging global shipping to restart their engines. The entire platform of regime change seemingly just vanished.
Wait, I have to challenge that narrative, because how does a government pivot from, we're going to dismantle your leadership to let's get this oil flowing in the span of a single news cycle?
It's jarring, I know.
It feels less like diplomacy and more like a corporate hostile takeover that suddenly turns into a joint venture, right? Because both CEOs realize crashing the stock price ruins them both.
That corporate joint venture analogy, that hits the nail on the head. It perfectly illustrates that brutal tension between ideological posturing and the pragmatic realities of global commerce.
Because of the oil.
Right. The Strait of Hormuz facilitates roughly 20% of the world's global oil consumption. The ideological desire for regime change it cannot survive the economic devastation of a prolonged closure of that strait.
The global market forces Washington's hand.
Exactly. And the U.S. is also trying to lock down other fronts in the region. Have you looked at the new Middle East peace framework?
Oh, the US-Israel-Lebanon trilateral agreement.
Yeah. It's a huge shift. They are setting up this trilateral framework, but they are explicitly excluding Iran and Hezbollah from the table.
Which is a bold move.
It is. They're trying to compartmentalize the maritime trade deal in the Gulf from the actual territorial peace frameworks happening in the Levant.
But while the U.S. is entirely consumed by all this high-stakes crisis management in the Middle East, a massive strategic vacuum is opening up in the Indo-Pacific.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
It really does.
Yeah.
While Washington is looking at the Gulf, China is methodically locking down its strategic presence. There's this newly leaked New Zealand internal intelligence report, and it warns of China's persistent military expansion.
And we aren't just talking about diplomatic posturing here.
No, not at all. The People's Liberation Army Navy is actively operating in the Tasman Sea now, and China launched an intercontinental ballistic missile, an ICBM, directly into the Pacific in September 2024.
Wow. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you see a textbook encirclement strategy, and it is moving steadily toward India's borders.
Which is the real concern for us.
Right. We don't even have to look as far as the Tasman Sea. Look at Bangladesh Prime Minister Tariq Rahman's recent state visit to Beijing.
Right, the infrastructure deals.
Yeah, China is now actively supporting the Tista River Comprehensive Management Project.
Which is incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
Because the Tista River flows directly through the Siliguri corridor, India's vital chicken's neck, connecting the Northeast to the rest of the country.
Precisely. By embedding themselves in the water management of the Tista, plus modernizing the Mongla port, and developing a Chinese economic and industrial zone in Chittagong.
The CEIZ, yeah.
Right. Beijing isn't just building infrastructure, they are building leverage. They're securing vital logistical nodes and creating these deep economic dependencies right on India's periphery.
That geopolitical encirclement really changes how we have to look at our own physical borders. Because border security isn't just about naval fleets in the Pacific, right? It's about what is quietly bleeding across our land borders every single day.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the new Vision 2026-29 report from the Narcotics Control Bureau. We are seeing a massive geographic shift in the global narcotics trade.
Yeah, we are witnessing the classic balloon effect in action here.
The balloon effect.
Yeah, when international pressure squeezes illicit activity in one region, the demand doesn't just vanish. The production just bulges out in a more vulnerable location, like squeezing a balloon.
Okay, that makes sense.
So in 2022, the Taliban implemented a strict ban on opium cultivation in Afghanistan, causing production there to plummet by over 90%.
So the global cartels simply relocated their agricultural base.
They did. Myanmar immediately emerged as the alternative epicenter. Between 2021 and 2023, illicit opium cultivation in Myanmar spiked by a staggering 56%. And because of the porous nature of Myanmar's geography, that massive surge in production is spilling directly into India's eastern states.
The numbers from the NCB are, frankly, terrifying. I mean, the Manipur corridor has turned into a primary staging ground. And we have to understand the mechanism here, because this is heavily facilitated by the Free Movement Regime, the FMR.
Right, the border policy.
Yeah, this policy allows tribes living along the border to travel 16 kilometers into each other's territory without a visa, basically to maintain kinship ties. But cartels are exploiting those exact kinship networks to move heroin and methamphetamine into the Indian hinterland.
It really forces us to realize that a policy designed for cultural preservation is being weaponized by international syndicates.
It is.
But it's not just the eastern border. On the western front, facing Pakistan, the methodology has evolved entirely.
The Punjab border statistics definitely prove that. Listeners, we're looking at a 100-fold surge in drone-based drug trafficking. Let me repeat that. A 100-fold increase.
It's unbelievable.
They went from detecting just 3 drone incidents in 2021 to 305 incidents in 2025.
That represents a terrifying leap in operational maturity. Cartels are no longer relying on human couriers trying to, slip through a fence in the dark. They are literally flying industrial payloads over the border guards' heads.
Yeah, totally bypassing the ground defenses.
Exactly. It entirely changes the calculus of law enforcement, which is why Home Minister Amit Shah's new strategy is pivoting so sharply.
Right. The strategy is moving away from the street level entirely. The new vision relies heavily on establishing exclusive NDPS courts.
For those unfamiliar, NDPS stands for the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act.
Thanks. Yeah, so these specialized courts are designed solely to handle narcotics cases, so they don't get buried in the decades-long backlog of the standard civil and criminal justice system.
It is all about speed and systemic disruption. The strategy integrates AI-enabled profiling to track money laundering, shifting the focus from seizing a single shipment of drugs to freezing the entire financial networks of the kingpins orchestrating the drones.
Now, dismantling those networks is a silent war, but sometimes defending those borders requires direct kinetic intervention. And today, the government officially pulled back the curtain on the human cost of that defense by declassifying Operation Sindoor.
Right.
This was the cross-border operation from May 2025. The government has published the names of the 6 armed forces personnel, 5 from the Army, 1 from the Air Force, who laid down their lives during that mission near Pahalgam.
Their names are being inscribed on the Tyag Chakra, the Circle of Sacrifice, at the National War Memorial.
It is a really sobering reality check. Behind all the high-level policy discussions and geopolitical strategy, there are individuals bearing the ultimate physical cost of national security.
And that leads us to a critical realization. True national security isn't just about kinetic military operations or drone defense. Security is fundamentally about the people living within the borders.
Absolutely.
It's about securing their basic rights, their economy, and their food.
So let's pivot to the domestic front, starting with the National Food Security Act, the NFSA. The Union Food and Public Distribution Department just proposed a major amendment to the Antyodaya Anna Yogana, the AAY scheme, which targets the poorest of the poor.
Yeah, so the current framework provides a flat 35 kilograms of free food grains per household, regardless of the family size. But the proposed amendment shifts this to a per capita model. So 7 kilograms per person, capped at a maximum of 35 kilograms per household.
The government argues this is about correcting intra-category inequities, right? Because under the old rule, a household of 2 people received 35 kilos, and a household of 8 people received the same 35 kilos.
Exactly.
So mathematically, the per capita nutrition was wildly skewed.
That is the administrative rationale, yes. They want to align state entitlements rationally with actual human caloric requirements.
But I have to push back here, because policy rarely survives contact with demographic reality without causing some friction.
That's very true.
Are we effectively penalizing states that have successfully managed population control? I mean, the Right to Food campaign and leaders in Kerala are already pointing out a brewing north-south divide.
Because of the family size demographics.
Exactly. Because family sizes in southern states are generally smaller, shifting to a per-person allocation means a significant decrease in the overall food grains those states receive. It's a classic example of a policy that looks perfectly fair on a spreadsheet, but it creates deep structural resentment on the ground.
Navigating that structural friction is the core job of governance, though, and we see the exact same balancing act in economic policy, where you have to balance domestic protection with international trade.
Like the newly proposed India-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement.
Right. This is a massive 15-year, $20 billion pact, and the headline grabbing everyone's attention is the 100% zero-duty access for Indian exports to New Zealand.
If you are an Indian manufacturer listening right now, zero duty sounds like a gold rush. It means our textiles, our leather goods, they become immediately cheaper and more competitive on New Zealand shelves. Why wouldn't every business want this?
Because modern FTAs are no longer just about slashing tariffs at the border. They are deeply complex legal frameworks built around something called rules of origin, or RO, and the compliance measures attached to them are brutal.
Let me use an analogy here. It's like baking a cake for a school bake sale, where the rule is everything must be homemade. But you don't just have to say it's homemade. You have to provide receipts proving every single egg, cup of flour, and gram of sugar came from your own garden, just to make sure you didn't buy a store-bought cake, slap your name on it, and sneak it onto the table.
That is exactly how rules of origin work. In international trade, the real fear is trans-shipment.
Right.
India and New Zealand want to ensure a third country, like China, doesn't just ship thousands of tons of cheap steel into New Zealand, slap a Made in NZ label on it, and then use this new zero-duty corridor to flood the Indian market.
Oh, that makes sense.
So to prevent that, manufacturers have to meticulously document their entire supply chain to prove where the value is actually added. This requires a level of traceability and process discipline that, honestly, many small and medium enterprises simply do not have the infrastructure to maintain.
Speaking of infrastructure and economics, the macroeconomic indicators just dropped too, right?
Yes. It's a mixed bag, but largely positive.
Yeah. Forex reserves just hit an all-time high of $681 billion.
That's a huge buffer for the RBI.
It is. And remittances are sitting strong at $135 billion. Though the rupee is hovering right around 95 to the dollar right now.
Right, which helps exporters but makes imports more expensive. It's all connected.
And tracking with that idea of regulation and economics, we have to talk about the tech space today. The AI regulation updates.
Oh, right. The GPT 5.6 deferral.
Exactly. OpenAI officially deferred the release of GPT 5.6, and this ties directly back to that new U.S. executive order regarding frontier model vetting.
Right, because the order mandates that any frontier model, meaning these highly advanced next-generation AI systems, they have to undergo rigorous federal vetting before they hit the public domain. The Wild West phase of AI drops is definitely ending.
Which brings us to the law, which is always the ultimate referee. So let's look at 2 major high court rulings reshaping the domestic landscape today. First up, the Allahabad High Court just struck down a move by the Uttar Pradesh government regarding village panchayats.
Yeah, the state government had attempted to appoint outgoing panchayat pradhans, the village heads, as administrators after their official 5-year term expired.
Right.
The state argued they needed more time to finalize OBC reservation panels before holding new elections.
But the court firmly rejected that. They enforced Article 243E of the Constitution, which mandates a strict 5-year tenure for panchayats. No extensions, no administrative loopholes.
It is a vital mechanism protecting the strict timeline of grassroots democratic cycles. If you allow terms to be extended indefinitely under administrative pretexts, you just erode the foundation of local elections entirely.
Exactly. Now, the second significant ruling comes from the Madras High Court, and it deals with the complex intersection of religion and reservation policies. The court ruled that a person who converts to Islam cannot claim backward class or BC Muslim status.
Right. They struck down a 2024 government order that had previously allowed converts from certain marginalized communities to retain their reservation benefits.
The mechanism behind this legal precedent is fascinating. The court's logic relies on the fact that the caste system is historically recognized as an immutable characteristic determined by birth within certain religious frameworks.
And Islam doesn't fit that framework.
Right. Islam, in its legal and theological framework, is fundamentally egalitarian. So the court stated that upon conversion, a person simply becomes a Muslim and cannot be legally pigeonholed into a specific caste-based sect for the purpose of state benefits.
Moving from the courts to the political arena, we have two major developing stories today, and I want to pause here. Looking objectively at the political landscape, it's crucial to understand the arguments from all sides to grasp the current discourse.
Yes, and we need to be incredibly clear here for you listening. We are not endorsing any political party's viewpoint today. We are simply conveying the allegations and actions as they are reported in the source material, just to give you a complete picture.
Exactly. So first, an FIR has been filed regarding the alleged embezzlement of donations for the Ram Temple in Ayutthaya.
According to the reports, 8 people, including close aides to the Temple Trust's General Secretary, have been arrested and sent to judicial custody, with around 80 lakh rupees recovered by the Special Investigation Team.
And in response, the Congress Party is demanding a Supreme Court-monitored probe and the complete disbandment of the current trust, basically alleging that high-level figures are being shielded.
But on the other side, UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has vowed strict accountability. He stated that any tampering with people's faith is intolerable, and he pointed out that arrests were made the absolute moment the SIT report was finalized.
Now, simultaneously, the BJP is aggressively targeting the Congress over a historical geopolitical decision. This is regarding the 1974 agreement about the Katchatheevu Island.
Oh, this has been a huge flashpoint.
It has. The BJP is alleging that the Congress government surrendered the island to Sri Lanka without consulting domestic stakeholders, primarily the Tamil Nadu fishing community, who continue to face arrests and hardship even today.
To give you the UPSC context on this, the 1974 agreement happened before the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, was finalized in 1982.
Which was a very different era of maritime law.
Entirely. During that era, countries were just rushing to demarcate maritime boundaries. The defense of the 1974 agreement has historically been that it wasn't a surrender, but a bilateral settlement to secure a stable, recognized maritime border in the Palk Strait, even though it meant sacrificing traditional fishing rights.
Again, history and law constantly intersecting to shape today's headlines.
But, for all our talk of human laws, geopolitical strategies, constitutional rulings, we ultimately have to confront the laws of nature.
Because the physical Earth dictates the survival of literally every piece of infrastructure and every policy we've discussed today.
It does. This raises an important question. Are we actually prepared for the ground beneath our feet? We just saw a devastating seismic event in Venezuela. A 7.1 and 7.5 magnitude doublet earthquake struck, leaving hundreds dead and turning city blocks into rubble.
Now, a doublet earthquake is a really complex rupture interaction. You basically have two massive quakes striking seconds apart.
Just back to back.
Yeah. The tectonic plates build up strain quietly over generations, and then the Earth settles its accounts in a single violent afternoon. And while Venezuela might feel geographically distant, the underlying science is a direct, urgent warning for India, specifically along the Himalayan front.
And this is where the news goes from concerning to chilling. We have learned that the Bureau of Indian Standards, the BIS, has officially shelved a decade's worth of scientific work on revising India's seismic hazard map.
Wow.
If they had published this revision, it would have added a completely new 6th seismic zone to the country's risk profile.
It would have required nearly doubling the design forces for buildings to 0.75 G.
Can you explain that metric for us?
Sure. So G represents peak ground acceleration. 1 G is the force of gravity. A force of 0.75 G means a building is being violently whipped sideways with 75% of its own weight.
That's massive.
It is. Our current highest risk category, Zone V, only requires structures to be designed to withstand 0.36 G. Countries sitting on similar tectonic collision zones, like Nepal, they prepare for much higher forces.
So why on earth would the government shelve a vital scientific survival map? According to the sources, a cabinet secretariat order warned that implementing the new, stricter standards would, quote, materially affect ongoing infrastructure and massive metro projects.
That's just wild. They basically chose the timeline and the budgetary constraints of current construction over an updated, scientifically backed reality.
Yeah.
Nearly 79% of the Indian population lives under moderate to severe seismic threat. What we are witnessing is the bureaucratic desire to build quickly, actively overriding the scientific knowledge of how to build safely.
And that brings us full circle. If you connect the dots of everything we've explored today, the profound interconnectedness is just impossible to ignore.
It really is.
A diplomatic shift in Beijing fundamentally changes the economic leverage over a river in Bangladesh. A policy ban by the Taliban in Kabul directly fuels a surge of narco drones in the skies over Punjab. And administrative delays in a Delhi office can leave millions of citizens vulnerable to the shifting tectonic plates beneath their homes.
It is all part of the invisible architecture that governs our world.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over today. If we as a society are willing to lock away a vital seismic safety map just to ensure our current infrastructure projects stay on schedule, are we building our grand geopolitical vision of the future on a literal fault line?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Progress and development are vital, but at what point does ignoring nature's absolute limits become the greatest threat to national security of all? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narrative, look for the mechanisms behind the headlines, and we'll catch you next time.